Hello everybody. Thank you again for joining me today. The last video I uploaded here a few weeks ago, I said I was going to be talking about Patty, the infamous Patterson Gimlin film. And that is what I'm going to do today. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be keeping the topic of this discussion pretty narrow. I'm not going to talk about her gait, the way she walks. I am not going to talk about how tall she is. And a little more on that, there is considerable debate amongst the community, the people in the community, about just how tall they think she is. Some people think she's 7.5 feet tall. Other people think she's closer to 6 feet. And then you have other people who think she's right in the middle. My personal opinion, based on my own measurements, is that she is probably somewhere closer to 6 feet. But that's a topic for another video. Today, I'm only going to talk about the length of her arms and try to dispel a couple of misconceptions that have been out there for quite some time. In the past few years, my channel racked up somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple million views. And as you might imagine, I have had a lot of comments on a lot of my different videos. Some of the most prevalent ones when it comes to, especially when I'm talking about a video that I think is either a fake or a misidentification, a lot of the comments I get are, one very prevalent one is, that arm looks way too long to be human. Okay. Short answer on that is that arm length alone means absolutely nothing. Okay. Unless you have a way to definitively measure the arm, either actual length or proportionally against the rest of the individual's body, then there is no way to definitively tell just how long the arm is, or whether or not it's a human length or a non-human length. Now, one of the other misconceptions that are out there is that when Patty walks, her arms go below her knees. Well, if you take a good close look at this footage, and if you study it intently like I have, you will see that at no time do her hands go below her knees. Now, there are a couple of occasions where it looks like it's going below her knees. During the forward motion of her step, she brings her knee very high in order to clear that foot off the ground, because remember, she's walking with a compliant gait. Her knee is a little bit bent, and she's got a real long foot, so she has to bring that knee real high off the ground. When the knee comes forward and her outside arm is swinging back, it looks like the hand is getting real close to the knee, but that is not significant. People do that too sometimes. But no, at no time does her hand go below the knee. The only way to definitively tell if what we're looking at on a photograph or a piece of video is either a person in a suit or some kind of non-human primate is to do what's called an intramembral index study. Well, what is the intramembral index? Well, basically what it is a ratio of the arm length to the leg length. And the anthropologists use this when they're studying the fossilized skeletons of pre-human ancestors. They use this to kind of get an idea of what the locomotor patterns is. Was this a quadruped, or was this a biped? Was this a leaping animal? Was it an animal that lived primarily in the trees and used its arms for swinging? That type of thing. So the formula for that is to take the arm length, divide it by the length of the leg, and multiply by 100. And the number you get will give you an idea of whether or not this is a human or a non-human. Now, I went through the Patterson Gimlin footage, and I tried to find some individual frames that were clear enough, but at the same time gave us an idea of her anatomy, where her leg meets the hip and where her arm meets the shoulder, to try to get the best idea of where these points are. I'm talking about where the humerus meets the shoulder and where the femur meets the hip. Like I said, we're not looking at a skeleton here. It's kind of impossible to know exactly where that is, but you can get close, and we can get close enough to get an accurate number here. Now, the methodology here is actually pretty simple. We don't have anything in the frame to give a scale. However, we don't really need that. We can use Patty's overall height, set that to 100, and then everything else that we measure in there will be proportional to that whole scale. So the arm length comes out to be 32.53, and the leg length comes out to be 42.08. And you can think of those in percentages. 32% arm length, 42% of her body is leg length. 32 divided by 42 times 100 comes out to 7.30. Now, on the next slide, you can see there's a little bit of difference here, a little bit of difference in these numbers. And, that probably has to do with the fact that this slide, she's kind of walking obliquely away from the camera. So everything's all, kind of cattywampus there. And the other thing is, like I said before, it's almost impossible to get 100% accurate placement of where the femur to hip and the humerus to the shoulder. But as you can see, 85.1, that's, 7 or 8 points higher than the last one, but it's still close enough. Even if I gave 10% margin of error on this, you'd still be between 70 and probably 90. So quite a wide margin there. Remember, the margin of error would be on the measurement side, not on the math side. So that does make a difference. So 75 on the first one, 85 or 72 on the first one, 85 on this one. Where does that place her in relationship to humans? Human beings have an intermembral index of around 60. All right. Our arms are quite a bit shorter than our legs. Another thing to note here, human beings, you'll notice that 50% of our stature is taken up by our legs. So no matter which way you cut it with Patty, even though, yes, her arms are not longer than her legs, there's no doubt about that, but her arms are longer than a human being's arm. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of questions and a lot of comments about this. One that I've actually gotten quite a few times in the past when talking about her arm length. A very common comment that I get is that, arm length can be explained away very easily. Limb extensions. Very simple. Well, there's a problem with limb extensions. Okay? Limb extensions is just an apparatus that will fit onto the forearm of an actor in order to lengthen their arm so they can portray an ape walking quadrupedally. But the problem with that is now the forearm is now proportionally longer than the upper arm. Okay? And if you take a close look at Patty, we don't see that here. Her forearms are the exact same length as her upper arms. Now, if you're a skeptic of all this stuff, that's fine. I'm not really trying to change anybody's minds on this, so go easy on me in the comments, okay? This video is more intended for the believers out there who insist that you can just look at the length of the arm and make a determination about what it is. I think I've shown here that that's really not possible, that you really need to see the whole body and measure the arms against the legs and get an idea of what you're looking at there. And quite frankly, most of the videos that I've seen that are out there today on YouTube, you can't really do that because you're only going to see maybe half the body. The lower legs are going to be obscured. And because of that, you cannot make an accurate comparison between arm length and leg length. So where does this put Patty in comparison to other hominids that have lived throughout history? Well, I think given her IMI, she's clearly not a human being, which would take her out of the genus Homo. Of all the examples of the genus Homo, you have us, Homo sapiens, Homo habilis, Homo neanderthal, Homo erectus, and a few others out there. I've heard a theory here recently. A person firmly believed that Sasquatch was descended from Homo erectus. I don't think that's possible. I think in order for Homo erectus to evolve into Sasquatch, it would actually have to de-evolve to some extent. Sasquatch, and just looking at her, and this is pretty much well known, she has features that are both human. When I'm talking about human features, the shape of her foot, of course being bipedal, but she also has features that are more like an ape. I spoke about the foot, the fact that her foot has what's called a mid-tarsal break. That's very much an ape-like feature. So I do not think that she is anything near the genus Homo. Of course, for a long time, the leading theory was that she was descended from something that was called Gigantopithecus blacki. Now, there was a recent DNA study that linked Gigantopithecus to ancient orangutans. And, of course, when that news broke, there's a lot of people out there. Cliff Brockman was one of them who thinks that kind of keeps Gigantopithecus out of the conversation. And his statement, his reasoning is that most of the sighting reports do not describe a creature that looks like an orangutan, and he's very correct in that assessment. However, as far as relic hominids go, Gigantopithecus really is the closest thing we have that kind of matches the description. There's a lot of people out there who think that she may be descendant from Australopithecines. Now, if you don't know what that is, Australopithecines were a pre-Homo genus of relic hominid that lived in Africa several million years ago. The thing about the Australopithecines, now they do have features that are kind of like Patty, that are human, and they have features that are kind of like ape. So she's kind of fits the bill in that regard. And something to note, the only real full skeleton we have of any of the Australopithecines is the very famous Lucy skeleton. And I'll show you this slide here. Her intermembral index is, I believe it was in the 70s to 80s. So she has an IMI that's close to what we're seeing with Patty. However, the Australopithecines were very small creatures. They averaged only about 1 meter in height, and they had very small brains, only about 1/3 the size of the human. So I don't really think they fit the bill as well. But the truth is, we don't really know. We just have no idea. In my mind, Gigantopithecus still is really the best possible candidate out there because of its size. You know, it's possible we may never know. We may never find any kind of fossilized evidence that's going to really kind of definitively place where Patty belongs. Unless, of course, we finally get that index specimen of a Sasquatch that we can do a careful study of her anatomy, careful study of her skeletal structure, and, of course, her DNA. So hit me up in the comments what you think about all this. I'd love to hear what you have to think. Again, thanks for watching. I promise my next video won't be quite so far off, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Have a nice day.